Let me in, and I'll reward you. A promise that would change everything. The arrow hit Jake Morrison in the shoulder just as he reached the riverbank. He stumbled forward, his horse screaming behind him as more arrows whistled through the darkness. Blood soaked through his shirt, warm and sticky against his skin. He had maybe 10 minutes before they caught up to him. A hand grabbed his arm and pulled him sideways into the brush. Jake spun around, reaching for his gun with his good hand, but stopped when he saw the man's face. It was a warrior, but not one of the riders chasing him. This man was older, his weathered face marked with scars, and his leg was wrapped in bloodied cloth. "Come," the warrior said in broken English, his voice urgent. "River!" Now, Jake didn't have time to argue. Behind them, torches lit up the night sky, and the sound of hoofbeats grew louder. The warrior limped forward, and Jake realized the man could barely walk. Without thinking, Jake grabbed him around the waist and helped him toward the water. The river was cold and fast, the current pulling at their legs as they waded in. The wounded warrior gritted his teeth, each step clearly causing him pain, but he didn't make a sound. Jake kept his grip tight, his own shoulder burning with every movement. They reached the middle of the river just as the riders burst through the trees behind them. Arrows splashed into the water around them. Jake ducked low, pulling the warrior down with him. The current was stronger here, trying to sweep them downstream. The warrior grabbed onto Jake's belt with surprising strength, keeping them both steady as they pushed forward. "Why are you helping me?" Jake gasped as they reached the far bank. The warrior didn't answer. He pulled Jake up onto the muddy shore and pointed upstream. In the moonlight, Jake could see a narrow canyon cutting into the hills.
The warrior started moving toward it, still limping badly. Jake followed, supporting him as best he could with one good arm.
They made it maybe 50 yards before Jake's legs gave out. He collapsed against a rock, breathing hard. The warrior sat down beside him, unwrapping the cloth from his leg. The wound was deep, infected. Without medicine, the man would be dead in days. "You saved my life," Jake said. "Those riders would have killed me." The warrior looked at him with dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets Jake couldn't understand. "You carry me across river," he said slowly. "Now you see what comes." "What do you mean?" The warrior pointed back toward the canyon entrance. "By morning, they come. Many warriors, 700. They wait for you." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "Wait for me? Why?" The warrior smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Because you help enemy of their chief. Because you cross sacred river with blood on hands. Because now you must answer." Jake stared at the wounded warrior, trying to process what he'd just heard. 700 warriors coming by morning. The number seemed impossible, but the certainty in the man's eyes told Jake he wasn't lying. "I didn't know," Jake said. "I was just running from those raiders. They burned my ranch, killed my partner. I didn't mean to cross any sacred ground." The warrior studied him for a long moment. "Truth or lie, it does not matter now. River is crossed. Blood is in water. My people will come." Jake pressed his hand against his wounded shoulder, feeling the warm blood still seeping through. His head felt light, and he knew he was losing too much blood. "If they're coming to kill me, why did you save me?" "Why not just let those riders finish the job?" "Because," the warrior said, shifting his wounded leg with a grimace, "my son leads those riders. He hunts me. 3 days ago, I spoke against war. I said white settlers can share land, that killing brings only more killing. My son called me traitor. He tried to kill me in front of council." The pieces started falling into place in Jake's mind. "So you're running too?" "Yes, but when 700 warriors come at dawn, they come for my son, not for me. They come because he broke oldest law. No warrior raises weapon against elder in sacred council. It is death sentence." The warrior coughed, his breathing shallow. "But they will find you with me. They will want to know why white man carries enemy across Holy River." Jake looked back toward the river. The torches on the far side had stopped moving. The riders weren't crossing.
They were waiting, watching.
That meant they knew something Jake didn't. "What happens if I'm here when they arrive?" Jake asked. "If you speak truth, if council believes you, maybe they let you live. Maybe they trade you to Army Fort for supplies. Maybe they keep you as prisoner." The warrior paused. "Or maybe they kill you as warning to other settlers. Those are terrible options. Yes." Jake tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. The pain in his shoulder had spread through his whole body now, making everything feel distant and unreal. He needed to bandage the wound, needed to stop the bleeding, but his supplies were still on his horse, probably dead by now on the other side of the river. The warrior reached into a pouch at his belt and pulled out a handful of dried leaves. Chew these, spit onto wound. It will slow blood. Jake took the leaves without questioning. He'd seen enough frontier medicine to know that native remedies often worked better than anything a town doctor could provide. He chewed the bitter leaves, feeling them turn to paste in his mouth, then pulled his shirt open and spat the mixture onto the arrow wound. It burned like fire, but within seconds the bleeding began to slow. "Thank you," Jake said. "What's your name?" "Henry. My father traded furs with French trappers." "They gave me Christian name." Henry smiled slightly. "My real name is longer. Means man who speaks to morning birds. But Henry is easier for white men. I'm Jake Morrison. Used to run cattle ranch about 30 miles east of here. Used to." The words tasted bitter. Everything he'd built over the past 5 years was gone now, burned to ashes by Henry's son and his raiders. "Your partner," Henry said. "The one they killed? Was he good man?" Jake felt his throat tighten. "Best man I ever knew." His name was Charlie. "We served together in the war, came west together after. He saved my life at Shiloh. Took a bayonet meant for me. I always figured I'd get a chance to pay that debt someday." He laughed bitterly. "Guess I won't get that chance now." Henry nodded slowly. "Debts follow us, even across river. Even into death." He looked up at the stars, which were starting to fade as dawn approached. "My son's name is Robert. I named him after a missionary who taught me English. That missionary said Robert means bright fame. I thought it was a good name for warrior. Now I think maybe fame burns too bright, makes men blind." "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Sun comes soon. Maybe 1 hour. Warriors will arrive when sun touches canyon wall." Henry pointed to the rocky cliffs surrounding them. "They will come from there, and there, and there. They will circle us. No escape." Jake looked around the canyon, evaluating his options. The walls were too steep to climb, especially with his wounded shoulder. The only way out was back through the canyon entrance, which would soon be blocked by 700 warriors. He had his revolver with 5 bullets left. That wouldn't do much good against those numbers. "So we wait," Jake said. "We wait," Henry agreed. "And we prepare to speak truth. Truth is only weapon that might save us now." They sat in silence as the sky slowly lightened. Jake could hear his own heartbeat, feel the pulse of blood through his wounded shoulder. Every minute that passed brought them closer to dawn, closer to the moment when 700 warriors would emerge from the darkness and demand answers. Jake thought about Charlie, about the ranch, about everything he'd lost in one terrible night. He thought about the arrow in his shoulder and the wounded warrior sitting beside him. Most of all, he thought about what he would say when those warriors arrived, what truth he could offer that might let him see another sunset. The first rays of sun touched the canyon wall, turning the red rock to gold. In the distance, Jake heard something that made his blood freeze. It was the sound of drums, slow and steady, echoing off the canyon walls like a heartbeat. The warriors were coming. They came without sound except for the drums. Jake saw them appearing on the canyon ridges, like shadows taking solid form. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Warriors in paint and feathers, carrying rifles and bows, spears and tomahawks. They moved with practiced precision, forming a massive circle around the canyon floor where Jake and Henry sat. The drums stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than any sound Jake had ever heard. 700 warriors stood watching them, and not one of them moved or spoke. The morning sun caught on metal and beadwork, creating tiny sparks of light across the canyon walls. Henry struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on a stick he'd found during the night. Jake stood beside him, his hand instinctively moving toward his revolver before he stopped himself. Drawing a weapon now would be suicide, and he knew it. A warrior stepped forward from the circle, walking down from the ridge with the confidence of someone who commanded absolute authority. He was younger than Jake expected, maybe 40, with eagle feathers in his hair and a bear claw necklace around his neck. His face was painted with red and black lines, and his eyes swept over Jake and Henry with cold assessment. "Father," the warrior said, his voice carrying across the silent canyon. He spoke in his native language, but Jake could hear the contempt in every syllable. Henry responded in the same language, his words sharp and clear despite his obvious pain. The two men exchanged several sentences, their voices rising and falling with emotion that needed no translation. Jake stood perfectly still, knowing that his life hung on whatever was being said. Finally, the warrior chief turned to Jake and spoke in English. "I am Chief William. Henry is my father, though he shames that title. You are white settler.
You crossed Holy River with enemy of our people. Explain why you live.
Jake met the chief's eyes directly. He'd learned long ago that showing fear to dangerous men only made them more dangerous. Your father saved my life. Raiders attacked my ranch last night, killed my partner. I was running when they caught up to me at the river. Your father pulled me into the brush, helped me cross. I didn't know it was a holy river. I didn't know he was your enemy. I just knew he was saving me when he could barely walk himself. William studied Jake for a long moment. These raiders, describe them. 6 men on horseback. They wore war paint, carried torches. They burned everything. My barn, my house, my cattle. They killed Charlie while he slept. Never gave him a chance to fight or surrender. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. They weren't warriors. They were murderers. Something flickered across William's face. He turned and called out in his language. Another warrior stepped forward, younger, maybe 20 years old. His face was painted with the same patterns Jake had seen on the raiders last night. Henry spoke suddenly, his voice weak but insistent. He pointed at the young warrior and said something that made several other warriors shift uncomfortably. The young man's face turned red with anger, and he started to speak, but William raised his hand and the youth fell silent. "My son Robert," William said, gesturing to the young warrior. "He led raid on your ranch. He killed your partner. He chased you to river. My father says this is true." Jake looked at Robert, seeing the hatred burning in the young man's eyes. "What did we ever do to you? We kept to ourselves, never bothered your people, never crossed onto your land. Your people are disease," Robert spat out. "You come to our territory, build your houses, fence our hunting grounds. Every white man who settles here brings 10 more. Soon we have nothing." He glared at Henry. "But old men like him say we must accept this, must share with invaders. He is fool and traitor." "That's why you tried to kill him in council," Jake said, understanding. "Not because he's a traitor, because he disagreed with you." William spoke again, his voice hard. "In council, no warrior raises weapon against elder. This is law older than memory. My son Robert broke this law. He brought shame to our people. For this, punishment must be given." He paused, looking between Jake and Henry. "But you, white man, you complicate this. You helped my father escape. You carried enemy across Sacred River. Council must decide what this means." Henry said something urgent in his language. William listened, then shook his head. They argued back and forth, their voices growing heated. Jake watched the other warriors, seeing them exchange glances and whispered comments. The tension in the canyon was building, and Jake knew that whatever was being decided would determine whether he lived or died. Finally, William turned back to Jake. "My father says you saved him not knowing who he was or what it meant. He says you acted with honor, helping wounded man when you yourself were wounded. He asks council to judge you fairly, to see difference between you and other white settlers who come with lies and violence." "I'm just a rancher," Jake said. "Or I was. I came west to start fresh after the war, to build something honest. Your son took that away from me last night. He took my home, my future, my best friend, but I'm standing here now, and I could have left your father to die by that river. I didn't. That should count for something." William walked closer, stopping just a few feet from Jake. Up close, the chief's face showed the weight of leadership, the burden of making impossible choices. "You speak well, but words are wind. Council will test you, see if honor goes deeper than talk. If you pass test, maybe you live, maybe you even find justice for your dead friend. And if I fail?" Jake asked. William's expression didn't change. "Then you die with my father. River will take both your bodies, wash away this problem. Either way, by sunset today, this is finished." William raised his hand, and 4 warriors came forward carrying wooden poles and rope. Jake's stomach tightened as he realized they were building something, but he forced himself to stay calm. Panicking now would only make things worse. The warriors worked quickly, driving the poles into the ground and lashing them together with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, they'd constructed a framework about 8 feet tall. William gestured to Jake, and 2 warriors grabbed his arms, pulling him toward the structure. "Wait," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What is this?" "Test of truth," William replied. "You say you are a man of honor. You say you helped my father because it was the right thing to do. Now we see if your words match your spirit." They tied Jake's good arm to one of the poles, stretching it above his head. His wounded shoulder screamed in protest as they positioned him, but Jake bit down on the pain and didn't cry out. They left his other arm free, hanging at his side. Henry was speaking rapidly, arguing with William, but the chief ignored him. Instead, William turned to address the assembled warriors in their language. His speech was long and formal, and Jake watched as the warriors listened intently. Some nodded, others frowned, but all remained silent until William finished. Then William switched back to English, apparently for Jake's benefit. My son Robert claims you and your partner were planning to bring more settlers to our land. He says he found maps in your house showing plans for town, for railroad. He says this is why he burned your ranch. Council must know if this is truth or lie. That's complete nonsense, Jake said. We had no such plans. We were just two men trying to raise cattle. We had no maps, no schemes. Your son is making excuses for murder.
Robert stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. He held up a leather document case, the kind surveyors used.
This was in your house. I took it before fire destroyed everything. Jake stared at the case, recognition flooding through him. That belonged to a surveyor who passed through 3 months ago. He was sick, burning with fever. Charlie and I took him in, nursed him back to health. He left that case behind by accident, said he'd come back for it when he returned east. We were keeping it safe for him. Convenient story, Robert sneered. It's the truth. Open the case. If there are maps, they're not of our land. That surveyor was mapping territory 100 miles north of us. William took the case from Robert and opened it. He pulled out several rolled papers and spread them on a flat rock. Jake couldn't see them clearly from where he was tied, but he watched William's face as the chief studied the documents. Several elder warriors gathered around to look as well. After a long silence, one of the elders spoke. William listened and looked at Robert with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. These maps show land far from your ranch. They show rivers and mountains we know. They are not plans for settlement in our territory. Robert's face flushed. Then he had other maps. I saw them. I know I did. You saw what you wanted to see, Henry said weakly from where he sat. You wanted excuse to kill, so you found one. This is why council must judge you, not just white man. William held up his hand for silence. Test is not complete. Maps prove nothing, except that white man tells truth about surveyor. But test is about more than words. Test is about pain, about choice, about what man will do when suffering is real. He pulled a long knife from his belt and walked over to Jake. The blade caught the morning sun, throwing light across Jake's face. Your wound is from arrow. It bleeds again now, from rope pulling on it. Pain must be great. This pole where we tie you, we call it speaking pole. When man stands here, truth comes out or death comes in. No middle ground. Jake felt sweat running down his back despite the cool morning air. His shoulder was indeed bleeding again, the rough rope having torn open the wound where the leaves had started to seal it. The pain was building, wave after wave of it, making his vision blur at the edges. Here's test, William continued. I will ask you questions. For each question you answer, I cut your arm once. Small cut, not deep. But many questions mean many cuts. If you lie, we all know. Spirit cannot hide when body is in pain. Truth shows itself. And if I refuse to answer, then you die now, quickly. Arrow to heart. No suffering. No shame. Some men choose this. It is acceptable choice. Jake looked around the canyon at the hundreds of warriors watching him. He thought about Charlie, dead because of Robert's lies and hatred. He thought about his burned ranch, his lost future. Most of all, he thought about Henry, who had saved him despite having every reason not to, who now sat wounded and exhausted, waiting to see if Jake was the man he'd bet his life on. Ask your questions, Jake said. William nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. First question. Did you come west to take our land? No. I came west because the war broke me. I saw too much death, too much hatred. I wanted peace, wanted to build something instead of destroying. Charlie felt the same. We bought that land fair and square from a territorial agent. We didn't know it bordered your hunting grounds. If we had, we would have asked permission, worked out some arrangement. William's knife flashed in the morning light. Jake felt the blade cut across his forearm, a sharp burning line. Blood welled up, running down his arm. He gritted his teeth, but didn't make a sound. Second question. If my son had come to you without violence, asked you to leave, would you have gone? Jake thought carefully. Honestly? No, not right away. That land represented everything Charlie and I had worked for, but we would have talked. We would have found compromise. We weren't the kind of men who needed to own everything or control everything. We just wanted a chance to live quiet lives. Another cut, deeper this time. Jake felt his knees start to shake, but he locked them and stayed upright. Blood dripped onto the ground beneath him. "Third question," William said, and Jake knew this was the one that truly mattered. "If council sets you free, what will you do? Will you go to Army Fort, bring soldiers back for revenge? Will you tell other white settlers that we are savages who must be destroyed?" Jake met William's eyes. This was the moment where truth or lie would determine everything. Jake took a breath, feeling the pain from his cuts and his arrow wound blending together into one constant fire. "If you set me free, I'll do what any man would do. I'll bury my friend properly, say the words he deserves. Then I'll rebuild if I can. But I won't bring soldiers. I won't tell settlers you're savages. Because you're not. You're people protecting your home from invasion, same as I would do if someone came to take what was mine." He paused, knowing the next words would either save him or condemn him. "But I want justice. Your son Robert murdered Charlie in cold blood. He burned my home based on lies. If your council truly values honor, then he should face consequences for what he did, same as you say he should face consequences for attacking Henry in council. One crime shouldn't erase the other." William stood perfectly still, the knife poised above Jake's arm. The silence stretched out, broken only by the sound of wind across the canyon. Then, slowly, William lowered the knife without making the third cut. "You speak truth," William said quietly. "Your spirit shows it. Even in pain you do not beg. You do not promise things you cannot give. You ask for justice, not revenge. These are different things." He turned to face the assembled warriors and spoke in his language. His words rang out across the canyon, passionate and forceful. Jake watched as the warriors responded, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Arguments broke out in small clusters, voices rising and falling. Henry struggled to his feet again and added his own speech. His voice was weaker, but it carried the weight of years and wisdom. Several of the older warriors seemed swayed by his words, their expressions thoughtful. Finally, one of the elders stepped forward and spoke. He was ancient, his face lined with decades of sun and wind, his hair white as snow. When he talked, everyone else fell silent. His speech went on for several minutes, and Jake could tell from the reactions that he was saying something important. William listened with his head bowed slightly, a sign of respect. When the elder finished, William nodded and turned back to Jake. "Council has decided. You will be freed. Your truth has been proven. You are not enemy of our people, just man caught in wrong place at wrong time." Jake felt relief wash through him, but it was tempered by uncertainty. "And Robert?" "And Henry?" "That is more complicated," William said. He walked over to where Robert stood, the young warrior's face defiant and angry. "My son broke sacred law when he attacked his grandfather in council. For this, punishment is exile. He must leave our people for 1 year, live alone in wilderness, learn humility and wisdom." "Father, no," Robert said, his defiance cracking slightly. "You cannot do this. It is not my choice. It is council's law." William's voice was hard, but Jake could hear the pain underneath it. "But there is more. You killed white man without just cause. You burned his home based on suspicion and hatred, not proof. For this you owe blood debt." Robert's face went pale. "Blood debt means I must serve him, work for him like slave." "For 1 year," William confirmed. "When your exile ends, you will return to his land. You will help him rebuild what you destroyed. You will honor memory of man you killed by giving year of your labor to man who survived. Only then will debt be paid." Jake stared at William, trying to process what he was hearing.
"You're sending your son to work for me?"
"After everything he did? It is our way," William said. "Blood debt must be repaid. He took life and property. You must restore what can be restored." He looked at Jake seriously. "But you must accept this. If you refuse, then other punishment must be given. Harsher punishment." Jake thought about it. The idea of Robert working for him, rebuilding what he'd destroyed, seemed almost impossible. But he could see the logic in it, the justice. And it was better than more bloodshed, better than bringing in the army and starting a war that would kill dozens, maybe hundreds. "I accept," Jake said. "But I have conditions. During that year, he learns. He doesn't just work like a slave. He learns about ranching, about why Charlie and I love that land. He learns that white settlers aren't all monsters, same as I've learned that your people aren't all savages. Maybe by the end we both understand each other better." William translated for the council. More discussion followed, but it was shorter this time. Finally, William nodded. "Council accepts your terms. It is a good proposal. Learning is better than simple labor. 2 warriors cut Jake down from the speaking pole. His legs nearly gave out, but they caught him and helped him sit. Another warrior brought water and clean cloth, tending to his cuts and his arrow wound with surprising gentleness. Henry limped over and sat beside Jake. "You did well," the old man said. "You spoke truth even when lie might have saved you pain. This is why council believed you." "What happens to you?" Jake asked. "I returned to village. My son Robert shamed himself, proved my words about violence and hatred were correct. Council now listens to elders again. Maybe peace has chance now." Henry smiled slightly. "And I am alive, which is better than I expected 3 days ago." William approached them, carrying Jake's revolver. "You dropped this when you crossed river. My men found it." He handed it back to Jake. 5 bullets left. "You did not use them against 700 warriors. This shows wisdom." Jake took the gun, weighing it in his hand. "Using it would have just gotten me killed faster. But many white men would try anyway, thinking they must die fighting. You chose to live instead. This is not cowardice. This is intelligence." William paused. "Your friend Charlie, you wish to bury him properly?" "Yes. Then we will help. His body is still at your burned ranch. We will take you there, help you dig graves, say proper words. It is the least we can do." Jake felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Thank you." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the warriors began to disperse, heading back through the canyon and into the hills beyond. Jake sat with Henry, watching them go, still trying to understand everything that had happened in one impossible night and morning. He'd crossed a river with a wounded enemy and found unexpected honor. He'd faced death and found life. He'd lost everything and been given a chance to rebuild, not alone but with the help of the very people who had destroyed his home. Robert stood apart from the others, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. In a year, that young man would come to Jake's rebuilt ranch and work beside him. It seemed impossible now, but Jake had learned something important in that canyon surrounded by 700 silent warriors. Sometimes the most unlikely peace comes from the most unexpected places, built on foundations of pain and truth in the simple act of helping someone who needed it, even when helping made no sense at all. Charlie would have appreciated that. He always said the best things in life are the ones you never saw coming. Jake touched his wounded shoulder, feeling the ache of it, knowing it would heal with time. Everything would heal with time, if people chose healing over hatred. He stood up slowly, Henry beside him, and together they walked out of the canyon toward whatever future waited beyond the river.